Okay, we will go ahead and call the July 15th meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Can we please have the roll call?
Andre Spinelli.
Here.
Radhika Krishna.
Here.
Jim Winchester.
Here.
Jeff Ron.
Here.
Brandy Eber.
Here.
Daniel George.
Here.
Strike.
Here.
Jared Gardner and Scott Pullis are excused. You have a quorum. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, disclosures. Any commissioners have anything they're wishing to disclose? Commissioner Krishna.
Sure, I'd like to disclose that two members of the consultant team, Holly Spiltoris and Shanna Zespan, are Holly's a former member of the board of directors of the organization I work for, and Shanna is a current member. I haven't had any conversations with them on this item, but just want to be transparent.
Okay, I do not believe you have any interest, personal or financial, and would direct you to participate unless there's any objection from the commission. Seeing none, you may participate. Commissioner George.
Thank you through the chair. Two disclosures this evening. First disclosure, I sit on a nonprofit board with Mr. Edgington, who is the chair of Imagine Girdwood. We both serve as directors on the Federation of Community Councils as officers in that organization, non-compensated. I do not believe that it will impact my ability to be impartial in this case, but I am disclosing it for the commission to make a ruling.
Again, I would direct you to participate unless there's any objection from the commission. Seeing none?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the second disclosure I have this evening is, as you all know, I hold a real estate license here in the state of Alaska, and it requires that I have it under a broker, and my broker is Connie Yoshimura, the owner of CY Investments. She also owns the brokerage that I hold my license at, which is Berkshire Hathaway. I do not believe I have a financial interest in CY Investments in any way. I have not discussed this plan before us this evening with Mrs. Yoshimura. I have not negotiated or discussed for any potential future compensation or opportunities with regard to Holton Hills. And I do not believe I hold a financial interest beyond that of any other real estate licensee who may bring a buyer for a home in any potential development that may occur in that area, which would be a widely held and non-specific interest. However, I defer to the wisdom of the commission. Thank you.
Again, I would direct you to participate unless there's any objection from the commission. Seeing none, you will participate. All right, we will move on to the public hearing, and I will read the procedures by which the public may testify. After the staff presentation is completed on public hearing items, the chair will ask for public testimony on the issue. Persons who wish to testify will follow the time limits established in the commission rules and procedures. Petitioners, including his or her representatives, will receive 10 minutes. Part of this time may be reserved for rebuttal. Representatives of groups, community councils, PTAs, etc., will receive 5 minutes, and individuals will receive 3 minutes. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the commission. You may only testify once on any issue unless questioned by the commission. Any party of interest wishing to appeal shall first file with the planning director within 7 days of the commission's decision made on the record a written notice of intent to appeal in accordance with AMC 2103-050A4A. Commission recommendations to the Anchorage Assembly are not appealable. Following approval of the written findings of fact and decision, any party of interest may within 20 days file an appeal by filing a notice of appeal and paying the appeal fee and deposit in accordance with 2103-050. The notice of appeal must be filed with the planning director on a form prescribed by the municipality. If the appellant is not the applicant, the appellant's notice of appeal shall include proof of service on the applicant. Alrighty, can we please have the staff presentation on case 2024-0074?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Appleby in current planning. I'll be giving the staff presentation. I'll first just mention the materials. So there's the written staff report, there's comments that the department received, and then the draft plan. There's also an additional information item that's just a table showing some technical edits. There's an additional comment the department received that's from HLB. And then distributed is also a copy of this presentation, as well as a map showing sewer and water service in Girdwood. So I'm going to just quickly go over the approval criteria that the commission must use to evaluate the plan. So the first criteria is met, that there's a change in projections, new issues. That one's I would say easy to evaluate because the plan, the Girdwood area plan was created in 1995. So the department found that criterion A is met. The other four criteria the department find are met with recommended amendments. So criterion B is that the amendment maintains the internal consistency of the comprehensive plan and it's consistent with other elements of the comprehensive plan. Criterion C is the proposed amendment would not be detrimental to the public interest, health, safety, convenience, or welfare. And criteria D and E reference if there's a change to the comprehensive plan map. This plan would, because there's changes to the land use map, and those changes need to be found equally or more supportive of the comprehensive plan goals, objectives, policies, and they also need to be consistent with the adopted description and locational criteria for the requested land use designation, and that it is physically suitable. So all these criteria are found met with the recommended amendments. This is just a quick overview of a land use designation. So it's a future community vision for property. Land use designation gives no obligation to rezone. So let's say a property today is commercial and the land use designation changes it to residential. There's no obligation for the property to be rezoned suddenly to match the new land use designation. However, it does give an opportunity where if a property owner wanted to rezone, then it could potentially be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So the land use designation is part of the framework to make land use code changes and district changes. So I'll go over the amendments that are in the staff report. So they have letters and then some have also a number after them. So the first one I talked about a little bit in the work session. So this is that the potential future dedicated parkland and vegetative buffers be removed as a planning consideration. These elements are not in the Girdwood Trails plan or any other element of the comprehensive plan. They're the only planning considerations that are not already identified in other adopted plans. So these here, the roads, conceptual future roads, those are taken from other planning documents, and the other ones are otherwise environmental constraints. So the department would like to see these two be removed from the list of planning considerations. And what we're talking about are this hatching for the potential future parkland, and then this is the buffer. The the buffer is proposed to be 100 feet, and the document says that this buffer would be created through an easement when property is platted. One thing I wanted to point out that I didn't in the work session is that this doesn't look like it's to scale, so this is supposed to be 100 feet wide. It's compared in the plan to these buffers here, but I measured all of these and none of these were 100 feet wide, so this would be a pretty wide easement. So the department is recommending that that be removed from the land use plan. One of the implementation items implementation actions in the plan is to create an open space, parks and open space plan. So this input from the community could still potentially be incorporated into the plan. It just, the department would like to see it removed as a planning consideration that's discussed in the text with the land use designations or on the land use map. 2A is a request to change the land use designation from open space to mixed use. This one we also discussed a little bit in the work session. This is a parcel that the Planning and Zoning Commission saw recently with the Alyeska Area Master Plan Modification and Development Master Plan. So a designation of open space would be inconsistent with that approval. I did want to make one correction in my staff report that was brought to my attention by HLB today. So I did say that this property has an owner with approved development plans. That is not correct. The HLB is still the property owner, and there's not approved development plans, like no building plans are approved. However, keeping this as open space is inconsistent with the approval of the Alyeska Area Master Plan Modification and Development Master Plan. I'll point out this area. So it's right here, northeast of the airport. So this would change from open space to mixed use, which is this red color. A few other reasons supporting the request for this change is that this was identified as one of the 11 developable parcels in Girdwood that was identified by HLB. Page 16 of the 2024 HLB work plan also describes this area for disposal. And a designation of open space is inconsistent with those documents in addition to just the recent approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Amendment 2B, this would be another change from open space. In this case, the request is to change it to low density residential. So I'll skip and then go back just to show where this parcel is. So it's here and it kind of sneaks around this area. So it would extend this yellow low density to go out a little bit. So the idea is there's already infrastructure and roads here. So maybe a low-hanging fruit for new housing might be these adjacent areas here. So the department feels giving this parcel a land use designation of low density could support the goals and policies of the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan and other plans. This parcel was identified again as one of the 11 developable parcels by HLB. The HLB work plan also describes that adjacent landowners have created some encroachment, so there's already some greenhouses, parking, tree clearing a little bit, so it's not entirely an undeveloped parcel, I suppose. If I go back, so this shows water and sewer. You also have a better map handout, but you can see it would be adjacent to areas that are already served by both water and sewer. This zoomed in just shows that middle parcel that we're not recommending be changed to single-family residential. The department is recommending this be open space, and you can see that this area is Class A wetlands, whereas the surrounding area is not. So that was one of the factors that made HLB find it as a developable parcel. Amendment 2C, again, another change from open space. This one, the request is to change it to mixed use, and it's this parcel here. Again, I'll flip down and just show the bigger map and then go back and explain some of the rationale. So it would be here, so it would extend this red mixed use further south to this parcel. Part of the rationale for that is this was part of one of the 11 developable parcels identified by HLB. This parcel also has some areas that are outside of all floodplains and free of other hydrological constraints. The other two adjacent parcels would then be left within open space land use designation, as they're mostly within the floodplain. I took this image from the South Town Site Master Plan. I believe I got that name right from my recollection in the staff report, but this shows how this brown area is not within either the 100 or 500-year floodplain. It says it's free of other hydrological constraints. The light brown is showing that it's above the 100-year floodplain, still within the 500-year floodplain. But the department felt that this parcel still was more suitable for mixed use than an open space designation, but is recommending leaving the open space here where it's clearly more in the floodplain. Amendment 2D is to remove the commercial recreation reserve and to place these areas into commercial recreation. This is a zoomed out version of the land use map that's in the comprehensive plan. And so I'm referencing this area here that has the hatching. It would instead become pink and just be commercial recreation. The rationale is in the plan and also in the work session. It was this hatched area in the reserve. It was described as still being intended for commercial recreation, but it could be, the land use designation would be changed before development, and it seems unnecessary if the long-term plan is still for commercial recreation. It's changing the land use designation wouldn't mean it would be developed today. It would just remove the step for the land use designation to be changed before it's developed. It would still have to go through all other processes. I also wanted to point out there's no other reserve categories left in the plan. That was also referenced in the staff report as this was a carryover of the 1995 area plan. However, none of the other reserve categories were carried over, so it just seemed to make sense that this should instead be commercial recreation and not commercial recreation reserve. Amendment 2E is to change the land use designation from potential future parkland to just parkland. I'll again zoom forward to point out where this is. So it's this parcel here. And since the department is recommending that the hatching be removed, the change would be to extend this green parkland here. And the reason is that in the 2024 HLB work plan already shows that this parcel is intended to be withdrawn from HLB inventory and transferred to Girdwood Parks and Recreation. So just changing that land use designation would clearly show that. Amendment 3 is just a quick text note to consider tsunami natural hazards in the areas where they're marked. Amendment 4, this came out of some of the reviewing agency comments. So goal E31 currently states all roads and parking lots don't have to be paved. the department would like a wording change for easier implementation. The way it's written now, it's more almost like code language where it's saying already what the rule would be, whereas this would update the goal just to say we're going to review the standards to allow flexibility on road and parking lot surfaces, and the details would be worked out in the implementation of that goal, but it's not kind of already saying what the code change would be. It would not preclude from still getting to where all roads and parking lots don't have to be paved. It just wouldn't say that already in the plan. So now we're at Amendment 5. So this one is a little bit similar to Amendment 4, where this wording change would allow for easier implementation, and it's, I guess, a little more open-ended as a planning goal. So there is an amendment to the suggested amendment, if that makes sense. So there's, in the staff report, this wording change was slightly different. This would change it to just stop at the goal is to remove use restrictions that limit opportunities for appropriate development, and then it cuts out it cuts out exactly if it would be by the runway or airport property. It's more general so that this action could be implemented, and details would be worked out in the implementation of it. Then Amendment 6 is just for technical edits. I did provide Table 1 that addressed some of those. I will say that both the petitioner and the department are aware that there are likely to be more technical edits. I suggest that the commission approve Amendment 6 with the table, and depending on decisions for other amendments, we may have additional technical amendments, but I did provide Table 1 to show some of these. Okay, now we're into additional amendments that were not in the staff report. So these are either from late comments or additional considerations by the planning department after the staff report was finalized. So the first was just a request from Huddle to make sure that the land use designations align to the boundaries of these platted tracts. So it's not requesting a change in the land use designation. It just wanted the land use designation to follow the boundary of the tract. And you can kind of see why if you look. So we're talking about these areas here. And so the way the parcel is, you would have little areas of open space that would follow this parcel boundary. And so it would just align these land use designations with the parcel, and it would save a step of having to do a small comprehensive plan amendment for like a sliver of open space, basically. And then this one is recommending a change from low-density residential to mixed-density residential. So this is the Alyeska Highway. This is the Alyeska Highway, and this is the area that's near the resort. There are these green space parcels here. You can see it a little easier if I go here and point it out. So we're talking about extending this mixed density residential, this brown out here. The general boundaries we used were these green space parcels here. So it kind of goes like this. All of these areas have water and sewer. You'll see we didn't have it extend further south here because these parcels don't have both water and sewer. But this clearly shows that these parcels, they're on a grid. Like it's really like in the center of town. And if I zoom out to the bigger overview, you can see a lot of the mixed density residential is on the outskirts of town, and there's really very little higher density in the middle of town. So this would at least expand that out a little bit and be consistent with those goals and policies that are in the draft plan. And so the department is putting this forth as an additional recommendation to the commission. Then I'll just close that these amendments are made to be consistent with both the goals and policies that are in the draft planning document and also with other plans of the municipality. So these amendments are consistent with goals and policies in the actual Girdwood Comprehensive Plan. So some of them, that Girdwood decreases its carbon footprint, maximize the use of existing housing inventory to meet housing needs, encourage a broad range of new housing development. You can really see how that additional amendment really helps meet these goals. I could go on and say a few more. There's some other goals and policies are that Girdwood is business friendly, that a car is not required to live here. So all of these changes are to be consistent with these goals and policies. These amendments are also consistent with the Anchorage Assembly Housing Action Plan. I put these strategies in the staff report, but I just wanted to call out that strategy A9 specifically mentions HLB lands that are suitable for residential development, to make those available. And strategy E10 says that Girdwood should specifically work on their housing challenges in this plan. These amendments are also consistent with the Alyeska Area Master Plan Modification and Development Master Plan. Again, that is with Amendment 2A that Mitten, that's northeast of the airport, that was approved recently by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And the amendments are consistent with the HLB work plan and their inventory of developable parcels in Girdwood. I included this shot from a slideshow that HLB had created on that inventory, just to show how they went from 58 parcels and it got down to 11, and took into consideration all sorts of factors. This is a map of the parcels they did find as the most developable. So you can kind of think back to the land use plan and how those relate. And then I did cite an article in the staff report. So the average housing appraisal is higher in Girdwood than it is in the Anchorage Bowl. And Girdwood housing market is at a crisis level, and the department feels these amendments are necessary to address the housing crisis and meet the goals and policies that are identified in the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan. And that is my last slide. I'm available for questions. There's also additional staff from current planning, long-range planning, and HLB to help answer any additional questions of staff.
Thank you. We have a question from Commissioner Krishna.
Sure, I'll start. There is some reference to a rewrite of the Girdwood chapter in Title 21 in here. Could you talk a little bit about what the proposed timeline is for those rewrites, and then what the department expects to happen between, if this plan is adopted by the Assembly, between the adoption of this land use plan map and a rewrite of that chapter? How would, say, a proposed development be evaluated when the chapter of code is maybe saying one thing, the zoning district is saying one thing, the land use plan map might be saying something else?
Yeah, so the department would evaluate an application by what is currently adopted. So we would look at the currently adopted plan and the currently adopted code. A reminder, the land use designation is not the same as the zoning district, so the zoning districts would not change with the adoption of this plan. I don't know if I have an exact timeline since we don't even know exactly the date of adoption for this plan, but let's just say this plan would be adopted in the fall of this year by the Assembly. Then there's implementation actions, and some of those do point to Title 21 changes. So we would come up with a work plan to make those changes. But there would not be inconsistencies because the zoning districts would not change. So it wouldn't be like code language and zoning districts different or anything like that.
So just to clarify, the existing zoning districts would carry.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, thank you.
Can I just elaborate on that? Can you tell us what the main changes to Chapter 9 you believe there are that would come out of this plan?
I will say some, and I will also invite Daniel McKenna Foster from Long Range to contribute because he was the staff representative that attended a lot of the meetings that were held in the formulation of this plan, and Long Range would also be doing most of these amendments. But I know the plan references moving more to a form-based code, so that would be a change. I did bring up that reference to paving, so that would be another code change. Daniel, I'll throw it to you to maybe give more information because this would be in Long Range's sphere to carry out these changes.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. This is Daniel McKenna Foster, Long Range Planning, and I was sort of embedded in the project a little bit through the last few years of it. I think ultimately it would really depend, again, how the community saw the implementation of the plan to create new zoning. But kind of like what Elizabeth said, the plan is really pushing more towards focusing on how Girdwood feels and how it looks rather than the traditional measures of density or dwelling units per acre or anything like that. So it would probably be focusing more on what is known as a form-based code, which is saying, look, if a building meets the standards and looks a certain way and fits the way that people want things to look, it doesn't matter as much what's happening inside the building, if it's 2 units or 3 units or 4 units. So that would be sort of a marked shift because the zoning right now, it really focuses on uses, and this would be more focusing on forms. And also kind of like Elizabeth mentioned, there's a lot of talk about transportation and trails, and at least from my understanding, Girdwood is really imagining the sort of comprehensive look at the community, how people move around, and thinking about integrating developments into different types of transportation, walking around, driving around, trails, bikes, whatever. So it's hard to say what it would look like, but I think it could be sort of a marked departure from what we see now. Girdwood has a lot of very specific zones and a lot of very specific processes. And at least from what I've observed, I think they're more interested in capturing the essence of what makes Girdwood special, and that could be maybe done through a little bit more of just like letting people do what they need, but making sure that it doesn't really go off the lot, and that's sort of a different approach. But it's hard to say because it would be, a lot of sort of negotiating the values of the plan with the realities of regulation through the zoning that would be more community work, and I think it'd be really hard also to say what the timeline that would be. But Mike Edgington is optimistic, I think, so I'll stick with Mike's optimism.
Yeah, and last thing I'll add is, I guess this plan, this is what we want to do. But it wouldn't like immediately change code or zoning.
Any other questions? I have one more. The Hillside District Plan specifically has some mention similar to the road surfacing in this plan about allowing for gravel roads, or not all roads need to be paved. But Title 21 says all development in the municipality will be on roads to meet municipal standards, and the municipal standards are paved roads. I'm just curious, a lot of mass is kind of outside the wheelhouse of planning, but I'm just curious how we envision achieving the goals of either Girdwood or the Hillside District Plan when muni specifications kind of conflict.
Chair Spinelli, I'll try to answer that one. So the idea with changing that, let me just flip back really quick. Okay, so this one here, it does kind of, it avoids being super specific so that, so it's not like the hillside plan where you have to look back at the plan. It's not, in general, goals and policies and plans shouldn't be as prescriptive as this, where this says that we're going to review the standards. I will actually throw that question to Dave Whitfield. He's the current planning manager, because I think he could maybe articulate a little bit better what I am trying to say here.
Dave Whitfield, current planning manager. Mr. Spinelli, I think you hit the nail on the head, that plans should not necessarily be prescriptive, that we should have goals and policies, and our code, in this case Title 21, implements that policy or goal. So our recommendation here, which should have been probably implemented along with the Hillside District Plan, would be to review standards that allow that flexibility, but then through a Title 21 amendment, implement that goal. Unfortunately, in the Hillside District Plan example, that didn't happen, and it on occasion is problematic for us because we do have that conflict that's created. It would certainly not be our recommendation to do it that way.
And lastly, I'll just say that this change doesn't, again, that you couldn't get to that. It just, it would just be in the review of the standards, and that you would get there instead of being stated in the plan.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, and I guess I agree with you for the most part. I guess if, as the tool a developer would use to vary from municipal standards would be a variance, and when the municipal engineer is reviewing a variance, sometimes squishy language would be less helpful than bold, direct language, I guess. So anyway, we don't need to waste any more time on that. So, any other questions? Commissioner Krishna.
Just a quick one. There is a comment submitted after we got our packet from HLB wanting some of the Holton Hills subdivision newly platted tracts to have some different designations than is shown. So that is already included in the amendments that you shared? Okay.
Yes, Commissioner Krishna, yes. And the change, again, is not necessarily for a totally new land use designation. So it's these tracks here. There's 3 in a row, so you can kind of see how they're mapped here. And so how they are now is there's some open space that's included on the tracks, and I don't believe that was the intent when this map was created. I think it was just that those parcels were recently platted, and so it would avoid having a parcel where it's mostly this mixed use that was envisioned for this area, but just because of the shape of the tract, there's a little bit of open space, and so it would avoid potentially having to make that small change to get this open space to be removed, so the tract is all this mixed use. So that's the change, and it's already included in the amendments.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no commissioners in the queue.
Thank you.
We have the petitioner's presentation.
Okay, we're going to take this 10 minutes to talk about the proposed amendments. All right. First one, vegetative buffers. I'm going to say what it is, if we agree.
Can you, sorry, back up. Please state your name for the record.
Holly Spoth Torres, SPOTH-Torres, Torres. I'm with Huddle AK. Okay. First recommendation is remove vegetative buffers. The petitioner does not agree with this recommendation. Vegetative buffers were included as a result of a lot of public comments concerned that adding additional areas of development would detract from the forested character of Girdwood, which is something, an economic driver, something the community highly values. The community wants to preserve as much vegetation as possible while building more housing. Vegetative buffers are not included in other plans. This is one of the reasons from the department. We believe the intent of a comprehensive plan for a community is to include elements that might not be included in other plans. This is a new idea that the community wants to consider and use as a tool to preserve vegetation in the community. It's not clear the purpose or uses of the buffers. We believe that the purposes are fully stated on page 316. They provide ecological and aesthetic benefits, wildlife corridors, stormwater benefits, improved air quality, and privacy between developments. We also think that in the comprehensive plan is an idea, there doesn't need to be a specific tool to implement. We didn't say this should be a 200-foot wide easement. It could be a parcel, it could be an easement, it could be an area platted by HLB. All of these are intended to be on public land. Okay, we can get into more later. Okay, 1B, remove potential future parkland. The petitioner, it kind of depends, I think, right now, if we agree with that or not. We received very specific requests to identify certain areas of open space as parkland, so that's why that was included. We think it's important to take a snapshot of what the community believes is important for parkland at this time. So that's why they were included as potential future parkland. Okay. 2A, change the area we call the mitten to mixed use. The petitioner doesn't agree with that. The draft land use plan map that was presented in February of 2024 did show this area as mixed use. The highest frequency comment received was to change that area back to open space. The community views this area as having a very high environmental value, recreation value, vegetation. So the planning department says this is identified as a developable parcel by HLB. This was one of the reasons that we did identify this as mixed use in the draft plan map. But again, as you know, there were significant public comments opposed to the designation. Let's see, 6 minutes. What, do you want to add anything else to that one? I think that covers it too. Okay. 2B, change Version Creek to low-density residential. The petitioner does not agree with that. Again, in the 2 draft plan maps that were presented in October, we did show this area as residential. But again, we received comments that didn't agree with that. It was so one of the planning department's reasons is it's identified again by HLB as developable. And this is one of the reasons we identified it as a parcel in February of 2024. Again, significant community response to that. Another reason is that it's detrimental to public interest and welfare from the department. We think that the community gets to have an opinion on where they want housing and where they want open space. The community views the preservation of open space and the addition of parkland as part of their public interest and welfare. We also think that there needs to be, that adding more residential at the end of that roadway might create some significant transportation challenges. And if that's the case, transportation needs to be figured out. There's already a lot of traffic on Timberline, and that would need to be addressed. Will you take this one? Yeah.
So 2C is to change the parcel south of the town, change the parcel in the south town site area from what is designated future parkland to mixed use. And I just wanted to explain the reason why we designated the mixed use extents we did is based on the floodplain mapping. As Elizabeth said, extending that mixed use would be within the 500-year floodplain. When we spoke with the watershed department, they did recommend avoiding developable areas within the 500-year floodplain for Glacier Creek because of the nature of Glacier Creek floods can be quite unpredictable, and that would be a kind of a better approach than what's typically mapped within a 500-year floodplain. So that's the reason why that shape is the way it is in our current map. But I believe the planning department's intent is to extend mixed use to the parcel lines itself, but I just wanted to explain why we had the shape we did.
Okay, removing commercial recreation reserve. We don't agree with that. Commercial recreation reserve was included. The draft map from February 2024 showed the entire area as open space. At that time, we received some comments saying that, no, actually, we might want to expand resort operations into this area. Throughout the process, we didn't hear that. It's unlikely that would happen anytime soon. So through this is actually one through the process where we received probably half the comments were like, keep it open space, half the comments, commercial recreation reserve. So we feel like keeping the reserve category ensures that there's adequate public input if there's ever additional commercial resort activity proposed, and a land use plan map amendment would be required. We think that's the best balance based on the comments we received. Okay, Winter Creek extension. We think that's appropriate, right? Yeah. 2E, we think that's appropriate. 3, explicitly calling out the tsunami risk zone. Yes, we think that's appropriate. The change in language for road paving. Yes, we think that's appropriate. Yeah, the amended number 5. I just want to say that the intent for changing for the airport parcel is that the community wants to ensure that there are, what word would you use? Appropriate activities proposed, and they were talking about on the airport parcel itself, not adjacent to it. So, yeah. I think we're going to have to think through how that one works. All the technical edits, yes. 2G, increasing the density of residential category near the Alyeska Highway and the resort from low density to mixed density. The petitioner does not agree with that recommendation. Again, the draft maps presented in October 2023 showed this area as mixed use and mixed density, and a high frequency of comments requested that existing single-family residential areas stay as low-density residential. Okay, the new 2F. The HLB amendment, yes, we agree with that one. Anything else you want to add? In 38 seconds.
I'd like to just quickly address the elephant in the room, the Alyeska Master Plan. We were told when it was adopted that no considerations could be given to the comprehensive plan that you have in front of us, and the discussion about the apparent conflict between the two could be addressed tonight. I think there was a lot of circular logic I heard in the past of a comprehensive plan must be consistent with existing plans, but obviously they are in turn consistent with the original comprehensive plan. that would tend to imply that you cannot change comprehensive plans. Clearly, that is not the case. So I think that question, that fundamental assumption that planning gave, needs to be addressed properly and needs to be discussed tonight.
Question from Commissioner Krishna.
Yes, Mr. Edgington, if you have any additional brief comments.
I will try and do it briefly. I also heard the other thing I'd like to address is this question about density. I think there may be perhaps some older thinking about what density means in the context of this plan. This is not specifying DUA densities. It's not saying this is the maximum number of units. A, quote, low density area can have, I think I did a rough calculation, it could be, 20 or so DUA, much more than what is traditionally called low density. It's about the footprint within the land and the interaction between the land. It's not about, it's basically the amount of clearing space, more or less, not the number of dwelling units. And I think the idea that the comprehensive plan purpose and goals and vision is about increasing the amount of housing we have. We do not have a problem with new housing. We have more new housing per capita than any other part of the Muni or indeed the Valley and Matsu. Very large number of housing units. They're just all empty. So all the new housing, almost exclusively, is empty housing. It's second homes, etc. They can be addressed through other policies. We do not need to just maximize the number of developable acres. I understand why it's an easy thing to measure, so I understand why planning are keen on that. I understand why HLB are keen on that. That is not the key metric. But again, we can discuss that later, maybe in a little bit more detail.
Question from Commissioner Ron.
Thank you, through the chair. In regards to Department Recommendations 1A and B, during the work session we had previously, I believe I heard the department indicate that they would consider at a minimum removal of vegetative buffers and potential future parkland from the land use plan map itself, perhaps allowing it to stay within the narrative of the comprehensive plan. How would the petitioner feel about that?
I'll start with 1B, which is potential future parkland. We think that if we remove potential future parkland and replace those current designations with open space, and then in the narrative we add another map that is not the land use plan map, but a map that goes along with the narrative that talks about those parcels that at this time the community was very interested in seeing as future dedicated parkland, that then could be used as a starting point when the Parks and Open Space Plan is initiated. We think that's a good compromise. Do you want to take the buffer? Go ahead.
Yeah, and I might actually, I don't know that planning is open to that same approach for the vegetative buffer, so I guess that might be a question to them.
I will say for the parkland, yes, we agree with that suggestion as I recommended. I'll add there's no need to change the wording in the amendment. As far as the buffers, we would not be as in the current form that the buffers are like the text does say that it would be a 100-foot easement, so we would not be supportive of it.
I don't think we said 100-foot easement. Did we say that word specifically?
I think just 100.
We recommended 100-foot minimum. The concept we're trying to get across here is that this isn't a platting action. This isn't an easement. This is intended to be a landscape condition that the community is interested in seeing. So and I think we'll go as far as to say is this condition is interested in the areas that we've identified on the map. So I don't think it needs to be a land use category necessarily, but I do think it's important to identify as a concept in that location. So how we get to that end point is important. Like, I agree that it's maybe not a land use designation. It's just a condition I think that the community is interested in from how the community looks and feels, what your neighborhood looks like, that sort of thing. But so to me, it's more than a design guideline, but it's less than like a standard or something. But it's important in that location.
If I could jump in with a little bit, so I was calling them 100-foot easements because it says 100-foot minimum width during the platting process. So it would be an easement. Not to get like back and forth on wording, but I just wanted to explain my rationale. And I did want to say one other thing is we do have landscaping standards, so maybe that could be a way to address it because there are requirements for landscaping between different zoning districts, so maybe it could be like a special landscaping requirement in code. The department would still not be supportive of them being shown in the way as the designated parkland, but perhaps it could be some sort of additional landscaping requirement.
I guess I'm wondering if this is like a opportunity for us to work with, I don't know if we can resolve it tonight, if there's maybe a way it could be written that the petitioner should work with planning on the logistics of how it's incorporated. Go ahead, Dave.
Through the chair to the commission, I think that we can absolutely work with the petitioners to address this issue, whether it's done through the plan, done through a formal amendment to Chapter 9 of Title 21, we can certainly work with them on it. Absolutely.
I will just add that Chapter 9 does have specific requirements for retaining vegetation on property lines. A question from Commissioner George.
Thank you, through the chair. For the petitioners, I'm trying to wrap my head around the vegetative buffer as it's drawn on the map. And what I envision is a long, straight stretch, not really a natural element like a creek or a ridge or anything like that. Kind of reminds me of like the power line, gas line trail in East Anchorage where it's just a cleared swath. And what ends up happening in those kinds of easements is utilities and roads go in those places. So I'm hoping, and I remember somewhere I read it in here, I can't remember exactly where it was, that there were some questions about what is appropriate inside of this vegetative buffer. Is it just trees and trails? And if so, is it just a long, straight, mile-long trail? Or is there contemplation of utility placement? Is it contemplated to be dedicated as right-of-way? Because there's a huge difference between an easement and a right-of-way. An easement, it could potentially be a private owner that gets taxed on that parcel, and right-of-way allows anyone to travel it. And can be improved with public dollars. And so I think it's a policy call that I think maybe could be informed by what you were hearing from folks during your survey. If you could share that. Thank you.
I think it's not intended to be 100-foot wide exactly from here to there. I think we're trying to explain a concept that may follow some natural topography. It might follow some existing vegetation all the way on the ground already. It might turn into a parcel. I think you can look to the Holton Hills example right now that has platted some specific parcels for, I don't know if they're called buffers, but it's like land that's not actually developable but serves as a buffer to increase open space, green space, wildlife corridors. So I think trails would be allowed. They're not intended to prohibit utilities from crossing them. I don't think it should be viewed as a utility corridor, but if a utility needed to cross them, it could. If a road to access a subdivision needed to cross it, it likely could. But this is intended to be, it's like a it's like a park and open space concept that preserves corridors of green space. Anything else?
And if I could just drill down a little bit, I don't know if you had a significant amount of community input or written comment about this item in particular, but what were the primary concerns with having it in this location in specific versus in other parcels and other areas?
I think the specific areas that are shown have some factors. One is that it's HLB land that is not parceled out. So it's not like we're creating a new encumbrance on a private landowner. And I think in these areas specifically, if you did not have the vegetated buffer, I think the community viewed it as a kind of a much larger development footprint than what exists. So doubling, in some cases, the width of development in those areas, and getting back to kind of preserving the forested character was really the goal within those areas, to not have it just expand development out without some kind of breaks in there. And I think to Holly's point, yes, it's shown as a line, but when parcels get developed, there'll be topography considerations, there'll be road network considerations. The parcel itself won't likely just be a box in those areas. So this gives flexibility that there's a minimum recommendation, but the shape could change and the width could change beyond that.
Question from Commissioner Strike.
Thank you, and through the chair. First question is, how long have you had visibility to the staff recommendations?
About a week.
Okay. I would have hoped that that's what we would have discussed during the work session. Especially as I'm saying that we have a lot of semantical differences in verbiage. I like the conversation that you're taking place with the staff as you're working through the nuances of their recommendations. But from tonight, it sounds like you've never talked to them until now about their recommendations. Is that not, but you've had them a week?
Through the chair, we've talked to the department about these.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? See none. We will now open the hearing for public testimony. Anyone wishing to speak, please step forward and state your name.
My name is Barbara Cruz. I'm a 40-year resident of Girdwood and currently the chair of the Girdwood Trails Committee. My goal
Are you
tonight-
speaking for yourself or on behalf of?
I did not get permission from the Trails
Okay.
Committee ahead of this, so I feel like I need to address you as an individual.
Okay.
My goal tonight is to convince you to deny the Planning Department's recommendation that area number 1, their 2A, I believe, be designated mixed use instead of open space. First of all, the Planning Department argues that Area 1 is one of only 11 developable parcels. And I think that statistic of 1 to 11 sounds fairly intimidating, but I'll show you my little drawing exercise. So I colored in all the parcels that are developable, and what you find when you do that is that essentially the entire valley floor is developable except for the areas that have already been developed. So it's a matter of, I'm a math teacher, a matter of statistics and how you present them. So if you talk about the number of parcels that are developable, only 19% are. However, if you look at the acreage, 33% of HLB's parcels are developable, and that represents 2,150 acres. Secondly, the Planning Department insinuates that GCP's designation of open space for Area 1 is in conflict with the 2024 HLB work plan. The HLB commissioners directed HLB to, quote, Defer disposal until adoption and approval of the Girdwood Trails Plan and the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan. And when those plans are approved, any further discussion and disposal be consistent with those plans, end quote. Area 1 is central to the current and proposed trail system that's in the adopted trails plan. The proposed GCP has Area 1 shown as open space. Neither of these documents envisions housing. So it seems disingenuous to me for the planning department to suggest that GCP needs to be changed to match the work plan. It's the other way around, and that was the intention of the commissioners. Finally, the planning department reasons that GCP is in conflict with the Alyeska master plan. The master plan was approved just 6 weeks ago. Pomeroy was aware that Area 1 was designated open space, so they deliberately pushed their master plan so it would be evaluated under the outdated Girdwood area plan. I wish that the Planning Commission at that point had chosen to postpone. I think the future of Girdwood should not be reduced to a race to see who can push through their own plan first, but should be a thoughtful process built on consensus. Thank you.
I have a question. Can you elaborate on what kind of activities are going on in the space that you're referring to?
I'm sorry.
What kind of activities are taking place in this open space that seems so contentious?
If you look at the Girdwood Trails Plan and look at the map of proposed and current trails, this particular area is practically a spider web of different trails. It is right next to the Arlberg parking lot, which has become the nexus of all the trails in Girdwood. We have spent 2 years in discussion with the Nordic Ski Club about developing the Forest Loop Trail. The Girdwood Trails Committee and the Nordic Ski Club. It took us 2 years to reach consensus because there were people who wanted no trails and people who wanted class 4 trails. So you have to put it in perspective. No one in Girdwood ever desired to have housing in this area. The discussion, the spectrum was all the way at the other end, whether there was nothing or there was a class 4 trail. It wasn't up here, we want development and roads and trams. We then spent another 4 years reaching consensus within the community on the Girdwood Trails Plan. So there have been 6 years of a lot of dedicated time on the part of Trails Committee to come up with a plan that we felt matched what the community wanted, and to put a housing development in the middle of this thing is potentially, I find it an insult to all our hard work. I believe that the resort feels that they have satisfied the need for the trails because they have integrated it in through their housing, but I can tell you that that is not what Girdwood envisions as the kind of trail system that they would like.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next person wishing to speak, please step up, state your name, and let us know if you're testifying as an individual or on behalf of a group.
My name's Deb Essex. I'm a resident of Girdwood. I'll be speaking on the behalf of a group. So I'd like 5 minutes, please.
What?
The Girdwood Nordic Ski Club. Seems appropriate. I should go next. Okay, my name's Deb Essex, E-S-S-E-X. I'm a resident of Girdwood. President of the Nordic Ski Club, advocate of all the upcoming bike trails, and one of the vice chairs of the Girdwood Trails Committee. I support the adoption of the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan, but without the amendment to change open space to mixed use in that parcel 6-011 north of the airport. And I also do not recommend the amendment number 5, removing restrictions that limit opportunities adjacent to the runway at the airport. On page 7 of the planning staff's analysis pertaining to this, it states, a designation of open space instead of mixed use to this developable parcel with a property owner having approved development plans is detrimental to the public interest and community welfare of Girdwood. So let's break down that amendment. Number 1, the property owner is the public, not HLB, not Pomeroy. Pomeroy does have an approved Alyeska master plan, but not a signed development plan. The only HLB approved proposal on that parcel is the Girdwood Nordic Ski Club's Forest Loop Trail. And that is consistent with the approved Girdwood Trails plan. Secondly, it is a developable parcel, but it's the second most expensive of the 11 parcels that HLB listed in their report, which ranks it lower on the suitability for development and affordable housing off the table. As a land manager, HLB's land suitability analysis should include, for this parcel, noise impact of the Girdwood Airport, the current FAA Airport Master Plan record information, and traffic patterns of the local aviation companies and visiting pilots. That parcel is the direct approach and departure of the airport. Residential development would create a congested area as defined by the FAA. So what does that mean? That means you can have no long lining and no helicopter sling loads. So of the 5 helicopter companies that fly in and out of Girdwood, and 1 with weekly summer sling loads supporting Eagle Glacier, the Thomas Training Center of the developing skiers and Olympians, summer dog sledding on Punch Bowl Glacier, always sold out, rafts to 20-mile, hiking to Spencer Glacier, all the U.S. Forest Service and Chugach State Park trail support, those can no longer fly over this parcel, which is one of the reasons why the Girdwood community voted mixed use down in the draft plan. A trail system, however, does not create a congested area and does not impact helicopter traffic. And 3, lastly on that amendment, changing it to open space would not be a detriment or detrimental to the public interest and community welfare, as recreation is an economic driver of Girdwood. Trails are consistent with land disposal for development. And throughout the 50-year history and the 17 land use and planning documents compiled throughout the Turnagain Arm and Girdwood area, none of them prior to the Alyeska's master plan suggests residential development on this parcel. And that is congruent with the plan in front of you, the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan. So obviously development's inevitable, but if we focus on safety and the values of our community, connectivity of trails, and conservation first, maybe we could avoid some of the mistakes of other well-known and overdeveloped resort towns and that have lost their affordability housing and small town feel, and we can avoid becoming Vail. Thanks.
Next person wishing to speak, please step forward.
Good evening. I'm presenting as an individual. My name is Seth Anderson. I own a home in Girdwood and am in the process of negotiating to acquire property north of the Girdwood Airport from the Heritage Land Bank, which was awarded in 2021 through a competitive proposal process. I followed this plan update and provided input over the last 4 years. For the most part, I appreciate and agree with the plans and the updates. In the goals and priorities section, I like that the priority on housing, recreation, and trails. However, I feel like there's a disconnect between the priority for housing and what's shown on the land use plan map, which is light on providing land for new housing where it's most feasible. Part of the plan included a land suitability map. The map took into account slopes, flood areas, wetlands, streams, avalanches, and it showed where housing was most feasible in the valley. If you layer on top of that access to public utilities and areas that are already developed over that map, you come up with even less land for new housing. I'd also like to point out that it's easy to look at the land use plan map and see that there's like a bubble where there's buildings and houses and shops, and then bubbles where there's recreation and trails. And what Girdwood wants, from what I've heard they want, and what could be done and should be done, is to have recreation and trails integrated with new development areas. The area north of the airport's a good example of this. In the Alyeska master plan update that was presented a couple of months ago, there was a test fit neighborhood for this area, and it showed clusters of dense housing that could be attainable housing. It showed retention of natural vegetation and forest land. It was oriented around existing trail systems, and it included new Nordic trail systems and Nordic facilities that are in line with the Girdwood Trails plan. And as I feel like that is a good example of what could be done in Girdwood to provide new housing and create areas with housing and recreation. I personally get excited about providing housing with adjacent recreation, making it easy for people in Girdwood to recreate right out their back door. And I guess in summary, I support the staff's recommendations to convert some of the areas that are shown as open space back to developable for housing, as it was in the 1995 plan. And I like the idea of prioritizing recreation and trails integrated throughout development areas. Thank you.
Quick question. So the commission approved a plan recently. If there was a housing project in this location, do you have a good grasp of what the future entitlement process would be? Would there be more public hearings, do you know?
Yeah, so that area has never been developed, and areas that haven't been developed in Girdwood require an area master plan and a development master plan process. The area master plan was completed 6 weeks ago, and that's a public process, community meetings, approval by the commission, and it just basically identifies there will be something in this area. And the development master plan gets down to the level of like where the roads will be, how big the lots will be, what the houses will look like, where the trails are going to be laid out. And that's another public process with community meetings, public outreach, and hearing at the Planning and Zoning Commission. The approval criteria for those, there will be a little bit of a conflict because the approval criteria does reference the comprehensive plan, conformance with the comprehensive plan, and there will be a conflict between what the comprehensive plan says and what the zoning map allows.
Thank you. I see no further questions. Next person. Oh, you gotta push a button somewhere. Yep.
Shannon O'Brien, Girdwood resident. Before I comment on my specific areas that I'm going to talk about, I want to remind everybody that this is not just a development and housing plan. This also includes open space. And so there's so much talk right now about development that I think that we're kind of watering down what the communities, all of the community's visions were, which also include economic development and transportation. You are correct that the buffers and the natural space were not in the trail plan, and that was because we were told that it was a land use issue. And so all through the many, many years that we went through the trail plan planning, there was a large voice about these open space areas, including north of the airport and west of the basin. In the end, it was decided that we weren't going to include it because we were going to address it with our land use plan. And now we're at our land use plan and we're being told that this isn't actually a land use thing. And so it's confusing. But it has been a conversation for years with our community. A vegetative buffer does not take away from development. It enhances it and meets more than one goal. It allows for development and at the same time keeps the small town feel of Girdwood.
By keeping forested spaces between old and new development, it partners those who are development-oriented and those who are open space-oriented. It seems like an easy meeting in the middle. Regarding the north of the airport and west of Alyeska Basin, many people have made great comments already about the north. Following up again on many hours during our trail plan, these areas have been designated for natural space, primitive, open space. The name changes every time we talk about it. For years, these are not new ideas. They were advocated for intensely prior to this plan, and again, here we are being told that they're not part of any plan. This is in no way a reaction to the resort master plan. These talks were happening before the resort created their master plan. They just beat us to the table. And so this isn't a reactionary measure. It is a measure that's been in the works for a long time. Girdwood did designate housing in areas that were deemed more affordable through information from HLB. We looked at the 11 parcels. The areas that we put as housing are more affordable from the information that we had to develop. The areas that we chose for open space are more expensive to develop. There also are prized recreation areas that are economic benefits to Girdwood because it brings people from all over Alaska as well as other states to come and not go on a trail through houses, but to be in the natural world. That's why they're coming to Alaska in general. That benefits Anchorage. That is what public land is used for. I urge you to keep the vegetative spaces and consider keeping the north of the airport and west of Alyeska Basin as open space. When we were talking about the buffer areas before and talking about putting it into zoning, those zoning open buffers never come to fruition. Thank you for your time.
Next up. Got to move or I'm going to shut this thing down.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Brian Burnett. I sit on the Girdwood Board of Supervisors, and this evening I am speaking to you as a Girdwood resident. I have lived in Girdwood full-time and owned property here for the last 25 years. My family has owned property and have recreated in this valley since the earthquake. Like you all sitting before me, I volunteer in my community serving on the Girdwood Board of Supervisors. I relish being part of the public process and collaboration with my neighbors to make our communities the best they can be. I thank you for your volunteer service on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I appreciate the opportunity to comment this evening. The Girdwood Comprehensive Plan represents a collaborative community undertaking. Hundreds of Girdwood residents worked together over thousands of hours to craft this plan that is before the Commission. I am here this evening to respectively request this Commission approve the plan as presented and advance it to the Assembly for their further input and ultimate approval. The plan as presented will facilitate development in Girdwood and protect lifestyle and recreation in our community. We value vegetative buffers because they protect streams, wetlands, and complement characteristics that define our community. We value the open space for the recreational opportunities, for the economic opportunities, and for the health of the community. Unfortunately, the timeline of our comprehensive plan has run counter to major developments that will redefine our valley and impact our community. Both of these projects have been approved by this Commission, while the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan has been going through the public process. Approval has been granted knowing full well that we need to reconcile the developments with the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan. So here we are tonight. On one side, we have a community-prepared plan moving forward through the public process, and on the other side, we have plans prepared by corporations, one an Alaskan corporation and the other a foreign corporation, and steered through the public process to be approved before the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan could come before this Commission. This very Commission passed the Pomeroy Master Plan for Alyeska Resort, knowing full well that there was a conflict with the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan. It was mentioned on more than one occasion that there were still many aspects of the public process in development master planning that still needed to go through the public before any development of this parcel would begin. Therefore, because this Girdwood Comprehensive Plan conflicts with the Pomeroy Plan, that is not a reason to reject the plan. The plan can be approved with the caveat that there are still public process obstacles and opportunities ahead. This plan represents public interests of Girdwood. Please consider the time and effort our community invested in this plan. This plan represents our views on community, on development, on opportunity, and on lifestyle that define Girdwood. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Crystal Hoke. I'm here today to speak in regarding the vegetative buffers. I know Commissioner Krishna was really instrumental in getting an area plan approved. And I know it was difficult to get the community on board and in alignment with the plan. I am sure there were a few items on that plan that were compromises. In my view, including some of these vegetative buffers be placed between existing neighborhoods and future potential neighborhoods is one of those compromises to avoid future friction. There is a lot of potential developable land shown on this map. By leaving in the vegetative buffers, it would maintain a sliver of hope that our voices are being heard and respected. In my opinion, by keeping it in, it will also avoid unnecessary testimony and emails to our assembly members to insert it back in. I just want you to imagine when you're coming into Girdwood, and then you look to the left side of the road, and if vegetative buffers are not included, you might end up with sea of houses from Alyeska Highway when you look up those driveways or roads, which is not consistent with a small town forest community. By leaving in the buffers, you would see the trees at the majority of the ends of these roads, but there would still be certain access points if the roads shown on the map do one day get developed. I really see these as similar greenbelt spaces to what's within Alyeska Basin, which I believe was platted by the state of Alaska. Showing this on an area plan map is important to make sure that it happens in the future. Because this is going to direct how HLB plats those out. It's really important for you guys to understand that. I'm sure you do, but I just want to emphasize it. I would like to welcome a workaround such as been discussed, including it in some way within the plan to work towards the intent of creating the buffer between existing and future neighborhoods. Maybe it's an easy change that would be changing the vegetative buffers designations to open space, as I believe crossings and utilities would still be allowed if necessary. I think it's really important to note that these buffers are being requested on public land and are not restricting a private landowner in any way. Thank you for your time and listening.
I have a question. So, some of the comments alluded to this. The text says the vegetative buffers will be 100-foot minimum. My read on this drawing is it's drawn maybe at 40 feet. And we heard from the petitioner, like, no, it doesn't have to be 100 foot, but the text says 100 foot and there's a line clearly drawn horizontal to any like natural topography features or perpendicular to what would naturally be vegetative buffers. So what is the idea on the width of these buffers? I guess what's your understanding on the width of the buffers?
I think what people don't want to see is an endless neighborhood where you're seeing houses and rooftops. So whatever distance is going to create that privacy for the existing homeowners that line that, which is a lot of people, and actually it's, I would say percentage-wise, would represent more people that live in Girdwood full-time are living on that strip of land. So to provide a strip of buffer so that we're not looking at a brand new neighborhood in a place where people are used to seeing trees for 40, 50 years of being in that area. So I would say, you know, there are a lot of times in many developments where they're creating greenbelt spaces, and I think that this is a really important place to put one because you're going to see it as you're driving into Girdwood.
Thank you.
And in addition, like Holton Hills is separate. You don't see it really. You have to go down 2 different streets in order to see it, but this is not that way. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Paul Cruz. My dad built a shack at the base of the chairlift in '62, and I moved to Girdwood full-time in about 1970. I'm here to request the removal of Area 2 amendment and designate those parcels as future parkland. Area 2 is the last, really, if you look at the map on page, I think would be page 7 of your handout. Area 2 is the last remaining land that is really central to Girdwood's population centers that's suitable for forest trail experiences that our visitors and residents really want. And if you expand to look at that map, you will notice that north of the highway is another neighborhood, and pretty soon the South Town addition will have more people in it, and the Mine Road neighborhoods are going to be built. Well, as it stands now, from the existing neighborhoods on the east side, anybody can walk to that parcel in just a few minutes. I live almost at the resort, and I can walk to the parcel in about 10 minutes. Well, Area 2 as a park could fulfill the community's desire for access to trail recreation without the need to use cars. For 6 years, or maybe 7 now, when we've done the trail plan and this master plan, the cry from Girdwood residents was, please, can we have recreation and trails near our homes so we can go out of our house and use a trail for an after-dinner walk or to push a baby buggy and not always have to use our cars to go to a distant trailhead that is expensive to build and very destructive to the environment. Well, the southeast corner of this parcel was in housing status, but as Holly said, it got changed to open space. And that was from the public comments that wanted park. Well, the southeast corner of that parcel, if you look at the map, has the finest hemlock trees in the municipality. That little grove is worth a park just because of what it is. And I would state that Area B, or Area 2, although it's 205 acres, only a fraction of it is buildable. And that fraction just happens to be where that grove of trees is. So there's plenty of land to build. What Girdwood residents are saying is, yes, we need new housing, but we also need to keep our town natural. And parks and recreation are an economic driver. And thank you for your time.
Can you just clarify what area we're talking about? Like
Yes.
what street would you access your hemlock grove off of?
Pardon me, I would access it off of Turin Drive.
Okay, thank you.
Do you know which one Turin is?
Yeah, one
Yeah.
down from Virgin Creek.
Yeah, one down from Virgin Creek. And that corner there, yes, it is developable. But you don't have to go very far in this whole parcel until it's not developable. And if you look on page 8, on the reasons why they want to have this amendment is, yes, it is one of the 11 developable parcels, but does it need to be developed? I mean, what is the best use of that land when in the future, if there's been a request in virtually every planning document that's come out of Girdwood since 1995 to build a pedestrian bridge from the west side over the river to connect the east side. It's been in almost every single document, including 1995. Well, if you look at the map, and this turned into a park, and that bridge was built, then all of the new housing and all the new residents in the South Township that are going to be in apartments, they could walk to this park in no time. And all the people that exist in the mining roads now and all the new housing that will be there, they could be at the park in just a little while, a quarter of a mile. Girdwood needs this central park. It's the only place it's left. If it's developed into houses, then Girdwood will never have trails that the people can walk out their door from and enjoy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up.
Are we on? Okay. My name is Lee Ellis, resident of Girdwood. I just want to be real brief. I am also in support of keeping the vegetative buffers. We talk about trails plans around Girdwood, and I think there's about another 100 miles of trails that don't exist on any map. And I think it's critical to have those corridors between communities as well as having a vegetative buffer to improve privacy. I will agree with the last speaker. The area west of the Alyeska Basin, I think would be a real challenge to develop because of transportation issues. We already have quite a few transportation issues with Timberline Drive. It's a 20 mile per hour area, and that just extends that drive a little further. I think one thing to consider too when you're looking at some of these areas is that the challenge of building roads in Girdwood and building secondary access, we're not part of the AMAT's plan. Any roads that we're going to have to build, likely we'd have to bond for. So that's always going to be a challenge when we consider development, is how we're going to actually develop more robust transportation, especially with regards to wildfire concerns, which I know sounds crazy when you say Girdwood and wildfire in the same sentence, but 30 days of dry, that certainly becomes a serious issue and things that we have to consider, and something we definitely have to consider on the hillside. And so we want to think about that in the future. And I also agree with the previous speaker, that would be a great area to develop as a park. I also would say I am not supportive of extending the mixed-use area in the squirrel cages area. That is kind of a dual riparian zone between California Creek and Glacier Creek. It is excellent parkland. I think it would be a very challenging place to build housing and has a high risk of potential flooding in the future. I do support considering the area north of the airport for mixed use. While I agree with everybody on the Trails Committee that it's a fantastic area and a place of great importance to the community of Girdwood, I also know that we're going to have to give something. We're going to have to give one of these 11 parcels of land to develop housing, and which one is it going to be, and which one is important to us? The answer is all of them. We probably recreate on every single identified parcel throughout the valley. So I appreciate the developer considering how those trails are going to work, and I don't think every developer will go that far. So I would be supportive of retaining that amendment, and that is it. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak, please step forward.
Hello. My name is Willem Laurie, and I'm the development manager for Alyeska Resort and Pomeroy Lodging. I wanted to say thank you and congratulations to Imagine Girdwood for getting to this point in the submission process. I know a lot of time and effort has gone into getting here, so thank you. There's a lot of great aspects to this plan that are aspirational for any towns. Preservation of the environment, integration of trails, and development of trails, and then the development of housing, and that includes diverse housing, workforce housing. So it is a great plan, but we do have concerns around this plan. In general, how it reduces the developable land in Girdwood, and then specifically how it pertains to the area north of the airport. So just a month ago, Alyeska Resort submitted an area master plan to include this area. We designed a 27-acre lower density development that included conventional single-family housing as well as attainable housing units. We also designed this area not to impact current trails and to consider the future trails that the Girdwood Trails Plan was approved for. And then further, we have committed to restricting STRs within this neighborhood, which has been an incredibly important aspect to GBOS, LUC, GHEC. We spoke about this a month ago, and our plans to do it are to do it through restrictive covenants in the HOA. This plan was adopted last month, and as it sits, the draft plan does not have, or has this as open space. This conflicts with the current zoning that is GRST2, and it also conflicts with the Alyeska Resort Area Master Plan as amended. We support this area as mixed use and not as open space, because we think that development and environment can be developed cohesively. We have a plan, and we want to build for the future of Girdwood, and to do that, this area needs to be mixed use. I just want to address a few things that were said earlier, and just in relation to the actual.
Your mic Shut it off. Keep going until you see the
There we
red
go.
light.
Just in terms of that actual area and one of the 11 parcels, so that whole HLB parcel is 1,500 acres. And once you bring that down to what we're looking at acquiring, we outlined in the area master plan is 96 acres. And then what you can actually develop, which is the GRST2 zoned area, is 27 acres. So it definitely brings it significantly down from what that parcel actually is to what the developable area is. And even then, we spent a lot of time in reforming that area to align with the proposed Girdwood Trails plan as well as the existing trails plan. My time ended, so thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
Good evening, Commissioners. Thanks for entertaining us. I'd just like to say to Mr. Cruz that my dad staked the chairlift in 1959, so keep that in mind.
Please speak into the mic and don't forget to tell us your name.
Sure. My name is David Nyman. I'm a part-time resident of Girdwood, and I just had a few comments I'd prepared, but after listening to it, I just wanted to say give some general thoughts. I do agree that vegetative buffers are a good idea whenever you can incorporate them into a community development. You look at, I used to love to drive through Wasilla with all the lush trees on the side of the road, and you can see how it looks. And so to keep our community appealing to not just our residents, but to all of Anchorage, and that's the one thing I hear lost here, that when Girdwood is trying to steer development, we're not thinking, oh, just that's us, it's our backyard. We're thinking of the entire city of Anchorage. This is an asset, it's a jewel, and it can be screwed up or it can be developed very thoughtfully, providing lots of opportunity for other people. And I think, so that's just, I do appreciate vegetative buffers. The area north of the airport is, it's been, as discussed by many, on the books for trails and open space for decades and decades. And so here in a matter of months, we're talking about taking all that work and all that thought and the desire for that area. Literally, when you ski back there, in a few seconds or minutes, you feel like you're completely outside of the city. With the trees and the location of the meadows, it really very quickly provides you a natural experience that is very difficult to get to for most people. But here, tourists can come. I mean, the tourists love the area. We love the area. It's just a wonderful place to augment. And you think there's a lot of trails. There's not a lot of trail room in Girdwood. I mean, it's a tight valley. There is, and as far as developable land, there is quite a bit of developable land beyond this. I mean, like you said, it's 27 acres, I think, is what he's talking about developing. I actually don't see that as a very cheap place to develop on bedrock over there north of the airport. So that's just something, I really believe that the natural value of that place trumps any kind of other development, particularly since the community has been behind that for so long. The squirrel cages, yeah, that's kind of it's a flood area. I don't know why we're really talking about it in that context. If you look at I did pull the flood models for Glacier Creek and California Creek. I haven't gone into them deeply, but that's something that would be good for us to endeavor in, is to go and run those models and model different scenarios to see what can be done down there. But I don't, it's not a great spot right now. Attainable housing, when someone uses a word like that, you got to go, what the hell? Oh, we're going to put these really nice houses and they're attainable. Well, what does attainable mean? All the houses being built now, most of them, as Mike Edgington said, are empty half the time. Anyway, the Alaska development plan was rejected soundly by both the Land Use Committee and the Girdwood Board of Supervisors. It was rejected, and you guys approved it, and I'm sorry that that happened that way. Thank you.
Thank you, P&Z Commissioners. My name is Grace Pleasance, and I'm a long-term Girdwood resident and a multifamily developer. Tonight, you're asked to approve a Girdwood area plan that has been 30 years in the making. It is my hope that you will approve the Girdwood area plan as the community has bringing this forward, and not with the comments from HLB or the Planning Department. Note that this process has been an ongoing for over 7+ years, and that HLB nor the MOA Planning Department have voiced any concerns regarding our process or community direction until now. A bit of history should be placed on the record as you consider the matter before you this evening. For over 40 years, the same planning department of the municipality and the municipality assembly supported putting a golf course and a rail spur through the valley for the Alyeska Resort. Both development schemes did not follow due process and were resoundingly rejected by the community of Girdwood. Thus came the updated 1995 Girdwood area plan that we are discussing tonight. For the past 6 years, I have been involved with the Girdwood GBOS subcommittee and in recent times the Imagine Girdwood group on getting input on development and housing issues. In most recent times, the past 24 months, I have noticed 1 or 2 MOA planning staff members attend these meetings with assurances that they were there to assist us in making sure that our Girdwood area plan was following the process and the procedures. Reading the comments by staff prior to this meeting seems that we have been operating in a vacuum to all these issues that were brought forward by the staff comments. Suggesting that we open up the squirrel cages to more commercial development seems a bit disingenuous when these HLB parcels straddle 2 active and major waterways and are clearly in a floodplain. That is one of the reasons why these parcels sit undeveloped. All the actions that the HLB commented to, as well as the MOA Planning Department and the most recent Alyeska Master Plan by Alyeska Resort, have been occurring in a backdrop to the ongoing Girdwood Area Plan discussions. The community has been very clear in its concerns, and yet the MOA, the HLB, the Planning Department, and Alyeska Resort want to continue to tell the community of Girdwood it knows better. These are the same entities with stewardship to the lands that the city of Girdwood brought to the MOA in the annexation in 1975 of over 10,000 acres. Please listen carefully to the community of Girdwood and its newly updated Girdwood area plan and approve this plan that is being presented to you without the disingenuous comments from HLB, MOA Planning Department, Alyeska Resort. Thank you.
Anybody else? Going once, going twice. We'll close. Oh, we will move on to phone testimony.
Hello? Hi, is this Kelly? This is the Planning and Zoning Commission calling for public testimony in case 2024-0074.
Yes, it is.
And will you be testifying as an individual or representing a group?
Individual.
Okay, you will have 3 minutes to testify. Please state your full name for the record, and you may begin your testimony now.
My name is Kelly Ockenick. I've lived in Girdwood for nearly 20 years and own a home here. And the 2 parts that I feel strongly about, the first and foremost is I forget what exactly the vocabulary that you use, but like the vegetative offset or the green buffer between the existing neighborhoods and future development. I think this is part of the Crow Creek Neighborhood Plan from 2006, and I think it's an excellent idea that maintains the character of Girdwood, which is the entire point of the comprehensive plan, is to maintain the character of Girdwood and support its economic development. I'm all for Girdwood growing, but like do it in a way that maintains the character for those that already live here. And so if you did have the green vegetative buffer between the existing neighborhoods and any future construction, you do just that. So people who have a foresty type place now, we'll have it then. And it doesn't materially change the developability, to keep 50 feet. So I think that's a model that was established in 2006, which is a good model, and it should be integrated and maintained in the comprehensive plan. Second point is that the area north of the airport that the community has unanimously or, consistently said should be reserved for recreational purpose. I mean, my understanding is that that's proposed to be changed to, mixed use, which implies, supporting Alyeska's vision over what the Girdwood community has come together and suggested or agreed on. If Alyeska wanted to make that statement and wanted to make it part of the comprehensive plan, I really wonder where they were in all the meetings the rest of us were at, having their voice be heard and engaging as part of the collective community effort. They were oddly absent from the whole process, and so it's difficult for me that would be behind closed doors rather than, a collaborative process. And so I don't agree with, categorically undoing that. Maybe there's a compromise somewhere. Maybe we could have ongoing discussions about it. I see both sides of it, but I don't think it should just be overridden without an integrated collaborative effort to arrive at the right solution for the community, because that is, some of our best land, and again, it's part of the character of Girdwood. So those are my 2 points, and I really probably feel the strongest about this vegetative buffer because I understand that the consequences are high by impeding Alyeska's development visions, but man, the buffers don't really stop. They don't stop any existing development, and they just do so much to maintain the character of Girdwood, and I think that's critical, and it's one of the fundamental elements of the comprehensive plan. And so I strongly ask and encourage you not to overturn that element. And that is my testimony.
I see no questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Hello, this is Mitch.
Hi, this is the Planning and Zoning Commission calling for public testimony in case 2024-0074. Will you be testifying tonight as an individual or representing a group?
As an individual.
Okay, you have 3 minutes to testify. Please state your full name for the record, and you may begin.
Okay, thank you. This is Mitch Roth, 139 Stowe Drive in Girdwood. And I am also a member at large of the Imagine Girdwood Board of Directors. And first of all, I want to thank the Commission and staff for all the work on going over the recommendation and preparing a recommendation. I guess the main thing I'd like to talk about is the process that we went through in developing the proposal for the Girdwood area plan. I was on the board during the last year and a half when the public process was completed, and also when the draft that you're looking at was developed and approved. And I want to emphasize that this was a highly involved community process that was led by Huddle Alaska. There were hundreds of written comments, all of which were categorized and detailed, and areas where there was agreement were settled, and areas where there were disagreement, compromises were reached in order to produce this plan, which has very strong support within the Girdwood community. Now, an interesting thing about that is that there were only a very small number of areas where the community was somewhat divided over what to do and which way to go. And in the end, we came together and had very good agreement. but it's interesting that in the land use designations of the recommendations, that basically the recommendations of the commission is to overturn and reverse the conclusions that went forth in the plan. And in particular, this is 2A, B, and C, Area 1, 2, and 3. And they all are justified in similar manner, with the same language being repeated, saying that this is one of 11 developable parcels. Well, HLB developable does not mean they should be developed. Open space has a very high value in Girdwood, so that's the first point to be made. And in relation to area number 2, the west of the Alyeska Basin area, I found it, that area was referred to as low-hanging fruit for development. But to me, old-growth hemlock forest is not low-hanging fruit. That is irreplaceable vegetation that should be preserved for the enjoyment of all of Girdwood.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Okay, thank you.
I see no questions. Thank you for your testimony.
Your call cannot be completed as dialed.
Elizabeth, it looks like you have an extra 9, or maybe that's...
Julie. Hi, Julie. This is the Planning and Zoning Commission calling for public testimony in case 2024-0074. Will you be testifying tonight as an individual or representing a group?
An individual.
Okay, you have 3 minutes to testify. Please state your full name for the record, and you may begin.
Hello, my name is Julie Raymond Jacobian. I live in Girdwood. I've participated in the Girdwood Area Plan comprehensive plan process for quite a few years. This process has been pretty problematic in a number of ways, but what I wanted to comment on here tonight are several substantive proposed changes to the plan recommended by the Planning Department. And my ask to your body tonight is that you not adopt these substantive changes from the Planning Department that I'm about to discuss. Girdwood has spent many years, on the draft of the plan before you. It isn't perfect by any means, but the version you have is preferable to one that would include the Planning Department's, the majority of the Planning Department's changes. Specifically, I want to say that I support maintaining the language about vegetation buffers. I want that in the plan. This is very important to our community and an important part of our vision. I also strongly support maintaining the language and maps in the current version of the plan that has the area west of Alyeska Basin subdivision as open space and potential parkland. This is area 2 in the comments from planning. For decades, the community has worked to preserve this natural space for low-impact recreation and wildlife habitat, and it is crucial to community well-being. Additionally, the area north of the area of the airport, which is area 1 in the comments from planning, should be open space as the current version of the plan from Girdwood has it. Girdwood has repeatedly communicated the desire to maintain the character of our community, which includes small town feel, connection to the natural environment, and maintenance of green and open spaces, among other things. This is supposed to be a plan for Girdwood, the vision of community members. The majority of the changes proposed by planning are counter to what the community has expressed throughout this long process. Removing vegetation buffers, turning open spaces into developments, removing desired parklands, none of these are what Girdwood wants, as is expressed via the plan in front of you. And none of those are things that will maintain Girdwood as a desirable place to live and to visit. The plan already, without the recommended changes, allows for substantial new housing and other types of development. and therefore these changes are unnecessary as well as contradictory to the intent of the community. If you do adopt these changes from planning, I think Girdwood bodies should rescind their support for this plan because it will no longer reflect the community. So again, my ask is that planning and zoning keep the language about vegetation buffers, maintain the language and maps for Area 1 north of the airport, and maintain the language and maps for Area 2 west of Alyeska Basin as open space and potential parks. Thank you.
I see no questions. Thank you for your testimony.
All right, thank you.
Hello, this is Elena.
Hi, Elena. This is the Planning and Zoning Commission calling for public testimony in case 2024-0074. Will you be testifying as an individual or representing a group?
As an individual.
Okay, you will have 3 minutes to testify. Please state your full name for the record, and you may begin.
Okay. My name is Elena DuPont. And hold on a second. Cora, I'm on the phone, honey. And I have children, as you can hear. Okay, so let me get to my letter to read it. I'm sorry. It's in the middle of evening time at home. Okay. This comment is in response to the Planning Department Staff Analysis and Recommendations Summary. This comment is a request for approval of the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan without the amendments that are identified under both 1A and number 2 on both pages 10 and 11 in the Planning Department's recommended amendments. The Planning Department went through the approval criteria found for the MOA Comprehensive Plan amendments. Much focus was given to criteria C, which states that an amendment should not be, quote, detrimental to the public interest, health, safety, convenience, or welfare of the community, end quote. Additional scrutiny was added in subsequent criteria for areas in the amendment designated as open space. The stated reasoning was that an interpretation that the proposed open space designation would not be supportive of the comprehensive plan goals or in line with the current development patterns. As a result, the Planning Department made several recommendations to remove areas designated as open space and change them to designations that would allow for development. It is concerning to see the Planning Department insert opinions of what the public interest and welfare of the community is. The Planning Department recommends removing many of the open space designations proposed in our amendment by making a unilateral claim that instead designating those spaces for development is in the public's best interest. The comprehensive plan amendment as proposed is the result of an exhaustive community process spanning several years. Public comment and public contribution has been a paramount part of that process, and the plan amendment as proposed is reflective of what the community of Girdwood sees as needed to protect the public interest and welfare. Girdwood has undertaken this and other planning efforts to position the community to respond to housing needs and future growth while also preserving the open space and parkland that are important for the community. Throughout this process, community members have stood up in agreement that this balance is critical for the community moving forward. As a result of that intensive effort, the comprehensive plan amendment as proposed is a clear reflection of what would serve the public's best interest. It is inappropriate for the Planning Department to insert opinions that are contrary to the outcome of a robust public process. Furthermore, the Planning Department has tied the recommendations to current
development proposals and narrowed the focus of community needs to economic and housing development.
Thank you.
The narrow scope
Thank
of the
you. Your time is up.
recommendations. Great, cool. Thanks.
I see no questions. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Hello?
Hi, this is the Planning and Zoning Commission calling for public testimony in case 2024-0074. Is this Ken?
It is.
Okay. Will you be testifying tonight as an individual or representing a group?
No, I'm just an individual.
Okay. You'll have 3 minutes to testify. Please state your full name for the record, and you may begin.
My full name is Kenneth Glenn Wall. And I would first like to say that I participated in the community meetings in crafting this document and also offered comments on the final draft. I disagree with many of the assumptions on which this document was crafted, and I also disagree with some of the proposed long-term solutions. But I've got to say that I felt my voice was always heard in this process. I'm not sure that that will truly be the case tonight, but regardless, I want to go on record as adamantly opposing Planning and Zoning Commission's amendments to the plan, except perhaps the tsunami threat to Old Girdwood, only because I really want to see what scientific justification there was that prompted this. I, in particular, object to the removal of vegetative buffers, along with the removal of areas designated for future parks, and also changing open space to mixed use. If enacted, these amendments alter the very identity of this community. I moved from Anchorage to Girdwood many years ago, and I've lived in a few locations in town. The one constant was always that nature was right outside my door. Whether forest, creeks, or trails, there it was. More trees than condos, more trails than multifamily houses, more green space than nightly rentals or Airbnbs. In short, I moved out of Anchorage to Girdwood for the outdoor opportunities it afforded. To remake us into a Nanaka Valley, a Fairview, or whatever vision the MOA has of a bedroom community removes the very essence of ours. This is both unethical and unconscionable, to say the least. I would support recommendations to look at the infrastructure that supports this massive growth within our community. We have a fire department that's primarily volunteer, and like most fire departments, it's woefully understaffed. We have no police force except those we contract through Whittier, and there is no law enforcement officer within this community that actually lives here.
Thank you, sir.
We
Your time
have-
is up.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, your time is up. Thank you for your testimony. I see no questions in the queue.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Mike Davidson.
Hi, Mike. This is the Planning and Zoning Commission calling for public testimony in case 2024-0074. Are you testifying tonight as an individual or representing a group?
I'm testifying as an individual.
Okay, you will have 3 minutes to testify. Please state your full name for the record, and you may begin your testimony now.
Sure. My name is Mike Davidson. I'm calling to testify in opposition to the Planning and Zoning Commission amendments or proposed amendments to the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan. As a resident of Girdwood, our community spent a pretty significant amount of time, trying to craft a plan that both met the community's needs, but also reflected the character of the community. As I'm sure everyone's aware, it was a several-month-long process, and I felt that the community did a really good job to try and craft a good plan for our future. And now we find that there is significant amendment to the plan, which I think, if nothing else, is kind of disingenuous to the public process. There's little point in our community spending that amount of effort to make a plan if it was simply going to be radically modified prior to ratification by the Assembly. There's parts that are of particular concern to me. One of them is the area located between Glacier Creek and the existing Alyeska Basin subdivision. That area has significant value to the Girdwood community. It also contains a large amount of wetlands in addition to a salmon-bearing stream in the form of Virgin Creek. But the community in large part excluded that area from the prospect of development, in part obviously due to things like the wetlands, but also because there's a large and robust trail system that is commonly used by many folks both living and visiting Girdwood in that area. It's also one of the last stands of true old-growth forest in the valley, and it's not a suitable location for future development. But in general, it's disheartening to me to see a community put so much effort into really carefully trying to craft a plan, and then to see it, amendments that would highly modify the plan that our community spent so much effort putting together. I appreciate your time. Thanks for letting me testify.
I see no questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Brendan.
Hi, Brendan. This is the Planning and Zoning Commission calling for public testimony in case 2024-0074. Are you testifying tonight as an individual or representing a group?
As an individual. Can you hear me okay? You're pretty soft.
Okay, you'll have 3 minutes to testify. Please state your full name for the record, and you may begin your testimony.
Hello, my name is Brendan Raymond Jacobian, Girdwood resident. The best thing we can do tonight is to move the updated Girdwood Comprehensive Plan along without the Planning Department's proposed changes as pertain to land use designations for areas 2A, 2B, 2C, and with regard to the vegetative buffers. My testimony tonight focuses on problems with these proposed changes. As a longtime participant in the plan's development, I can say that there are elements of the plan and its process I found problematic. That being said, in the choice between the plan as it's presented and a version that takes the changes from the Planning Department, that's a no-brainer. This plan is not supposed to be a supermax, ground-disturbing plan for just any old place. It's supposed to be a plan specific for Girdwood's future, which strives to, 1, create appropriate development opportunities of various kinds, and 2, preserve the character of the community, which already attracts residents and visitors. It's irresponsible planning to create plans which destroy the very reason that people already live in and visit a place, and that is what planning suggested changes would do. Girdwood laid out a vision that allowed for appropriate development, such as affordable housing, while maintaining its strong natural character within and around the community, including protecting prized places for wild nature and recreation and the community's forested small-town feel. The plan without the proposed changes is generally aligned with this and would allow for substantial housing and other development while maintaining the community's character. Planning's proposed revisions, however, are exactly the type of thing generally kept out of the plan during its development, in which the community explicitly and resoundingly got struck out of draft versions during review. These proposals would be a radical departure from and undermining of years of planning and community participation, would make core elements of the plan and community's vision, values, and goals subservient to massive housing and other large-scale development. It would be divorced from the community's input in various planning and public processes. The rationales provided are cherry-picked and poorly reasoned, present opinion about public interest and community welfare as fact, and twist the plan's words. I'll give 2 examples. Area 2B, also known as Area 2, is identified as open space, but planning recommends it be changed to housing. It's well known that Girdwood residents have fought for decades across multiple issues, a golf course, gravel mining, recreation planning, and natural gas, to keep the Timberline and Virgin Creek watershed area west of the Alyeska Basin subdivision protected for its existing natural quality and low-impact recreation, which the plan as is would enshrine. Additionally, Area 2A is widely considered a crown jewel of South Central's natural environment and trails recreation. That's the area north of the, or next to the airport. Planning changes would essentially obliterate both areas, which collectively constitute the bulk of the easily and publicly accessible Girdwood land base of natural and recreation areas, and which are central to the daily well-being and economy for residents and visitors alike. Who's going to want to come or live down here for Girdwood's beauty and recreation when the forests in the community have been cut down and the areas that people walk, hike, bike, and ski in are eliminated? So again, the best thing you can do tonight is move the plan along without planning's proposed changes regarding vegetative buffers and regarding land use designations for areas 2A, B, and C. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I see no questions. And I believe that concludes our phone testimony. One last call before we close the public hearing. Oh, no. Oh, no, there's no more calls. I'm the last call for these folks. All right. There is no time left for petitioner's rebuttal, so we will close the public hearing. What is the will of the body? Motions by Commissioner Krishna. Would you like to state your motion?
Sure. I move in case 2024-0074 to recommend to the Anchorage Assembly approval of a comprehensive plan amendment to update the Girdwood Area Plan with the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan, subject to the conditions shown on pages 10 through 12 in the staff report, and including the following additional amendments: 2F, 2G, 5, and 6 as recommended by staff.
That motion has been made. There is no second. That motion is seconded by Commissioner George. Commissioner Krishna, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you. I may support my motion, but I am hoping that there are some amendments forthcoming which would help me better support the final motion as arrived to by the commission.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion? Commissioner Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the prior commissioners putting a motion on the table. I'll go ahead and move forward with a proposed amendment. I propose amending the main motion by striking the inclusion of the existing department recommendation 1A and B and replacing that with the language update planning considerations throughout the document and work with department to resolve those planning considerations for vegetative buffers and potential future park land.
Can you restate that one more time?
Happy to. What is needed for clarification? What will be stricken, or what? Okay. New language proposed would read: update planning considerations throughout the document and work with the department to resolve the planning considerations for vegetative buffers and potential future parkland.
Does the motion out there?
Apologies for continued confusion. The intent of the amendment is to prompt the petitioner to work with the department. So, and I think that what we're reading doesn't include that language.
Can you tell us where to add words and what words?
After the comma, please add work with the department to resolve. And then strike update.
Commissioner Ron, would you like to restate your motion?
Hopefully one last time. Striking inclusion of 1A and B, replacing with language to work with the department to resolve the planning considerations for vegetative buffers and potential future parkland.
Okay. Motion made. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Strike. Commissioner Ron, would you like to speak to your motion to amend?
Just briefly, I believe it was addressed during the work session and then again during the public hearing that there's intent by both parties to work together to resolve some of the consternation that we heard tonight about these two considerations. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion? Commissioner George.
Thank you, through the chair. I want to retouch upon a point that I made or tried to get some dialogue on earlier regarding the vegetative buffers themselves and how they're defined. The language in the plan itself does, as you pointed out, can contemplate a 100-foot buffer. And I really want to know, or it would be helpful to know what the community support, what the written comment record was for these buffers. In my daily job life as a real estate agent, if someone looks at a home and it backs up to a wooded area and they say, if I was to tell them this will never be developed, I would get sued if it wasn't an actual dedicated park or a national park or a state forest or something like that. And so I think what we have here are people that have had homes for 40, 50 years that have backed up to Heritage Land Bank parcels or parcels that were conveyed to the city to fulfill our entitlement. And they want to hopefully maintain that character that they have enjoyed that has become a central part of this community and the way of life there. And so how do we resolve this concern? A central tenet of private property is you're not entitled to your neighbor's property. You're not entitled to enjoyment of adjacent parcels necessarily if they're private property as well. And the Heritage Land Bank parcels are kind of this weird in between. They are our city's land, but it is a land bank that is intended for future development. And so this is essentially an encumbrance on a future developer or landowners. And it's maybe more feasible as a plan guidance for inclusion as plat notes or future action in a platting board consideration of these specific Heritage Land Bank parcels. But to draw them on a land use plan map when they are largely, the intention of these was not necessarily as a straight line, I think was the consideration here. We're not looking for just a straight line of trails. They're more conceptual than that, but they still provide a buffer. And I think that an example was given of another developer who had achieved this balance. And so for us to put it on a map and specifically draw where it's going to be or to state its width in this plan, I think is not giving the level of guidance that a planning document of this gravity should give it. And I think maybe deferring it to a future platting action with mention that it's important for the community to have this characteristic included might be as far as we can go. But I fear tying the hands of any future development with an HLB parcel without their express input, or letting them know, are we contemplating a record or a recommendation to the assembly that they place a right-of-way, an easement? Are these to be only vertical crossings of utilities and roads, or can they run lengthwise? I know when you bury a gas line, you put in overhead lines, you clear those. You make sure you don't have tree hazards. There's wind and there's rain and there's weather in Girdwood. I grew up there. So anyway, I wanted to put those concerns on the record that I don't know that it's as fleshed out as it needs to be for us to be able to potentially include it in a drawing on the map. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll add that I have some of the same concerns Commissioner George mentioned without seeing topography and a little more information about the terrain, about drawing a line. That being said, it was pretty clear hearing from the community through public testimony that a visual buffer keeping the Girdwood characteristic is what the intention is. And I heard from the petitioner and staff a willingness to kind of massage this area of the plan to find some agreement, hopefully. So that's why I intend to support the motion. I think that's the intent of the amendment. Seeing no one else in the queue, call for the vote.
Ms. Heber, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you.
That motion passes. Now we are back at the main motion as amended. Any further amendments? Now would be the time. or anyone wishing to speak to the main motion? Commissioner Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just perhaps a bit of a prompt to other commissioners if they're pondering additional amendments. I don't know that I'm ready to formulate one, but would be happy to have one laid on the table by others and further discussion about it. Clearly, we had a lot of public testimony around department recommendations 2A, B, and C primarily, with some additional public testimony around, obviously, the vegetative buffers, which I believe the Commission has already handled by amendment, but also, was it 2F, if my numbering is right? Just a second. Or, excuse me, 2G, it is. I'll share my thoughts, I guess. I'm generally supportive of the work that has gone into this body of a plan. 6 years worth of effort, and it seems like a heck of a lot of community involvement along the way. And I would be remiss if I'd say I wasn't concerned with the prospect of just pushing the department's recommendations forward in total, given there was just a week, it seems, perhaps, for the community to respond to some issues that they have quite a bit of concern about. My particular position on 2A is that this body as a commission did hear an area plan and act upon that. There is intention for development. We heard from testimony tonight that there is a process that will be followed if development is to occur associated with that master plan, and opportunity for continued involvement to help shape what does go into, if anything, that area north of the runway. So in a sense, to me, that 2A stands out from the other areas of concern. With that, I'll stop talking and see if other commissioners have anything to add.
Commissioner Krishna.
I appreciate Commissioner Ron bringing up that large issue, and while folks are mulling that over, I've been told I can make amendments to my own motion, so I will throw it at, I think, an easier one out there, which is that I would like to move to strike number 4 and 5. That's the ones about roads and parking lots being paved and swapping the word runway for property. I think you can just say move to strike numbers 4 and 5. Okay. Amendments 4 and 5 in the staff packet.
Motion has been made by Commissioner Krishna and seconded by Commissioner Strike. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Sure, this is really just for plain language reasons. I think the intent of the plan's language shines through in the original wording, and the proposed amendments don't necessarily keep that. I think, we as a commission are used to seeing plans come to us 15 years after they've been adopted, when the original intent may or may not be clear, and so for future readers, I think these provide much more clear guidance as to the intent of the drafters than the amendments. And I do believe that there'll be much process that road projects and future projects will go through that can work out the implementation, and just for the sake of readability and clear language, I would move to remove these.
Commissioner George.
Thank you to the chair. Commissioner Krishna, I must say I am in awe of your ability to weave a terminology. The intent of the plan's language does in fact shine through, I think, in the simplicity on number 4, and I agree with you. I appreciate you bringing this amendment. I think that anything short of what the plan had doesn't go far enough in allowing flexibility for future development. My fear is missing the mark when we have an opportunity to provide clarity for future development, and I don't want to leave ambiguity out there for anyone who wants to do some kind of a development in the future. So I strongly support the removal of number 4. Number 5, perhaps I would inquire as to the impact or the effect of removing the differentiation between runway versus property. Is there a distinction, or what is the effect of sticking with the word runway? Are we, does it have any effect particularly that we know of?
Would the petitioner like to respond to that question?
Hello, Mike Edgington, Imagine Girdwood. There is an underlying issue which is not discussed directly in the plan about the relationship between municipal land use code and state airports. The position of the state DOT is that municipal land use code does not apply at all. They can do whatever they want on airport property if they own it. And they use, well, I'll editorialize briefly. As a justification, they're using a statute which talks specifically about aviation use. So this language was somewhat carefully originally proposed, so it touched on that issue for perhaps something happening in the next year or two. So it was fairly carefully structured. So I think the original language, in my opinion, the original language is the right language, but there may be other alternatives to that.
Through the chair to the petitioner. So by leaving it as airport runway being the basis for what we're dealing with, you don't see any harm, and you are would be satisfied with removing this recommendation?
I think the original language we had in there, i.e. so following the striking of the changes, conforms to what I think we as a community want, both now and it gives us the opportunity to continue this general discussion. I don't think that I read the DOT comments, and I wasn't exactly clear what their purpose was. But again, as far as I'm concerned, I think the original language is fine. So I do not have a vote, but if I did, I would support striking the number 5 change.
Commissioner,
Oh, I just requested to speak. I guess I could say my rationale for including that amendment. So that was in response to the state comments, and then after discussing it more in the department after the staff report was published, we wanted to just stop it at development. I guess I have experience where there's very specific FAA regulations for what you can build adjacent to an airport. So I guess that was my rationale, was just I thought that's what the state was trying to communicate, but anyway, I guess the department, we probably feel more strongly about some other changes than that one, but that was the rationale, was to respond to the state comment, and with my past background knowing that there are some very specific requirements for what may be built next to your runway.
Thank you. Commissioner Ron.
Thank you, through the chair. I appreciate the position stated by previous commissioners about this amendment. I don't intend to support it. I believe I heard agreement amongst the petitioner with Department Recommendation number 4. I heard discussion around previous language as shown in the plan as being directive and potentially conflicting. with other plans, procedures, regulations, and acceptance of the proposed revised language to meet the intent of flexibility or enabling flexibility going forward. With respect to Department Recommendation 5, I am aligned with Ms. Appleby's comments. To me, there's a distinction between a runway and an airport property, and there are standoff distances associated with various uses on an airport property, including the runway. You know, you've got a runway, you've got a taxiway, you've got an apron, you've got all these different fixed forms of infrastructure, which is different from the property itself. And I think the DOT comments and what the department's trying to get at is bounding on the property and not the runway itself. Thanks.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion to amend? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote.
Ms. Eby, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you.
The motion passes. Oh, it failed. That motion failed. So we need 100%. So just so you know, we need 5 yeses to pass. Okay, we are back on the main motion as amended. Commissioner Strike.
As noted, we're back on the main motion. Correct. We're back on the main motion, correct?
Yep.
So
As
another
amended.
So another amendment. And I think this is the elephant in the room to get this started. And this would be an amendment to delete 2A, B, and C. And I put this forth from a couple standpoints. This is a comprehensive plan put together by the community.
Can we just get the motion?
I did.
Okay. I want to get moved, seconded.
Got it. Move.
Is there a second? Motion seconded by Commissioner Winchester. Commissioner Strike, would you like to speak to your motion?
This comprehensive plan has been developed and put together by the community, and the community has spoken out. And while this commission and while the planning and zoning can work to put amendments in to consolidate or put together previous approvals from the developer, what they have put in place, and so forth, I think I want to have a comprehensive plan that reflects the community, and it's their plan and their vision. And this verbiage is exactly contradictory to that plan and the vision that they put forth. So we, in our infinite wisdom, we're going to change their plan, we're going to change their comprehensive plan. Yes, is it going to create a conflict? It may very well. It may create a conflict with the developer and what they're attempting to do, but as we spoke when we approved that, a month and a half ago, their approval was predicated on the existing plan as it was in place at that time. We knew that a new plan was coming forward. Here's the plan. Oh, we don't like that. So I'm going back to the sound basics. This is the community's plan and the community's vision, and I'm here to support that vision for the community. So I will support that motion.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion? Commissioner Krishna.
Sure. I don't think I'll support this amendment. I very much appreciate the testimony that we heard tonight. I think it was, you know, I always appreciate the level of community support and the number of people who drive out here to Midtown after work and spend hours and hours with us. But I will say that what also weighs on me is just the number of meetings we've had, a number of Girdwood cases we've seen where we hear the need for housing over and over again in this room. And I will say that was a focus of the plan, but I think that I could imagine an alternate scenario. If there was a housing section in this plan that laid out clear policy guidelines for exactly how the community would like to see short-term rental units regulated or long-term rental units subsidized, and some idea of how many units that might bring to a community, and there'd been some other path forward, I could imagine myself supporting that. But absent that sort of policy guideline within this plan, I think I have to agree with staff that we know that there's a housing need in Girdwood. We know that community members want housing in Girdwood, and I see it as our role to help the community achieve that within the scope of this plan. I don't see another path forward to achieving that goal within the document that we've been given.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion? I will just add that I'm slightly conflicted on this. I do echo concerns from Commissioner Strike as well as the same from Commissioner Krishna. Lumping 2A, B, and C all in as one is probably going to not gain my support. Seeing no one else in the queue, we will call for the vote.
Ms. Eber, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Could you clarify that was a yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
That motion to amend failed. We are back to the main motion as amended, and we are going to put that on the screen just so everyone can know where we're at. Commissioner Krishna, just for the public point of view, or so they understand what we're doing. Commissioner Krishna's intent was to originally, in the original motion, was to include the additional amendments recommended by staff, and that is shown now. Can you just verify that that was the intent?
Yes, I actually believe I stated that when I made the original motion.
Okay, so now we have it written so people know what we're looking at, and we all know as well. Commissioner George.
Thank you. I know it's late and I don't want to beleaguer this too much, but item 2G, I guess you need a motion. For purposes of discussion, I move to strike item 2G.
Thank you for that.
And if it dies, that's okay.
You need to hit the button. That's moved and seconded. Would you like to speak to your motion to amend?
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you. Yeah, this one, I don't have the exact wording of G in front of me. Okay. This talks about changing from low density to mixed density for a significant portion of the bowl. And I don't think we really got into the petitioner and the basis for the inclusion, the petitioner's perspective on this and the basis for inclusion of this. While I understand the overarching need for additional density in housing, and when I refer to the plan, page 312, talking about the difference between low density and mixed density, some of the impacts that would occur in areas where views are extremely important to some of these homes. The mixed density proposes height limitations greater than the low density district, higher percentages of lot coverage, no or high DUA standards, no or small lot size, and no restriction on number of units. So while we think of mixed density in Anchorage terms, this is much more open to development. And so my concern would be, is this what the several hundred respondents of this survey were looking for in this large area that is close to the base of the mountain? I remember when I grew up, we had a chalet with a glass front that looked right at the mountain, so we could watch the skiers coming down. And when you remove restrictions on lot sizes and you start removing height restrictions and increasing lot coverage ratios, and the recommendation comes from staff after the plan has already been out for comment, it gives me a moment of maybe I want to hear a little bit more from the petitioner, if that's okay. And is there infrastructure to support this? Thank you.
Yes, Bree Kiefer with Huddle. In response to Commissioner George's comments, I think the community would agree with striking 2G. Like you said, the intent of the mixed residential or the mixed density versus the low density has more to do with form and height standards than necessarily just upping the units. I think a lot of the community were concerned about losing the character of those areas and really wanted to keep it in a similar style than what it currently is. So I think everything you described is consistent with what we heard from the community.
I'll maintain my motion. Thank you.
Motion to amend, striking 2G. Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion to amend? Call for the vote.
Ms. Eber, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you.
That motion fails. Oh, it passed? I thought we needed 5. Oh, where? Oh, I'm sorry. That motion passes.
You're fine. Okay. It says it on his screen. It says 5 to 2.
Okay. I will mention this for the commission that there is the option of a motion to postpone if we're not feeling comfortable with where things are, or not. Or we can continue making amendments, or we can vote on the main motion as amended. Commissioner Strike.
I appreciate the comment, and I guess I would ask any postponement, what would we hope to gain? What expectations would there be in place? And my initial thoughts are this gives a chance for the petitioner to sit down and meet with the staff and not just take what we have done this evening from a amendment standpoint, but to collaboratively and jointly speak to these areas so that there can be a clear meeting of the minds and a development of a comprehensive plan that truly now does come back and reflects the community. I'm adamant about a community plan involvement that doesn't have as much involvement as we've had tonight and with the planning and zoning has had. So I like to see the collaboration take place between that community group and the staff and so forth to come up with the nuances and see where the checks and balances and the points that have been brought up in this meeting here this evening. Otherwise, are we just delaying to delay, or what was your goal for delaying?
As much as I hate out of turn talking, those were all perfect findings for a motion. I will entertain you. My goal was, since we already have an amendment that puts the petitioner and staff together, the idea was that there could be some more collaboration done and hopefully finding some balance between the community and planning staff.
And to further carry that conversation, when I put forth the earlier motion that failed of 2A, B, and C, some of the consternation I felt that was coming from commissioners was too many. That 1 or 2 of those may have passed muster, but I'm hoping that the community group, the Girdwood group, can see and read between the lines of what has occurred here to have the roll up the sleeves and sit down meeting with the staff to see what they're up against and what they can collaboratively put forth to put this together. I don't know what's taken place in the last week. I don't know if everything's fallen on deaf ears or not, but I think the staff is now listening to the commission here and where we're coming from. So I'm hoping that there's some, let the air out of the tires and let the two parties come together.
Commissioner Winchester.
I agree with the last person who talked, whoever that is. This is a tough one for us. We don't wordsmith a lot of amendments on the fly. It seems like you guys have been meeting 60 meetings once a month for 5 years. There's a lot that we're not privy to. And so, you know, I'm willing to support the amended main motion because I had difficulty with the items that we changed mostly. I don't think everybody gets what they want out of this, but I think it strikes a nice balance. But we're so close here. This is 30 years in the making, this plan. And if we have a short board tonight too, that's something to consider. So if we did postpone and both groups can get together to get that final 3% done, I'm in support of that also. So.
There's a lot of discussion around postponing, but no motions on the floor. Commissioner Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would it be out of turn to turn to the department and see what benefit they think a postponement might have?
That seems completely appropriate. Would the department like to respond?
Chair Spinelli, so I've been tracking it. It sounds like the department and the petitioner were in agreement on number one, the new number one, I should say. The commission has struck 2G. There seemed to be general agreement on the other ones. Where we are in disagreement is for 2A, B, C, and D. I don't know necessarily what meeting would do. I think we would still bring our perspectives and ask for a decision from the commission. I'll throw it to Dave Whitfield, the current planning manager, just to see if he has anything else to add on behalf of the department.
Yeah, through the chair to the commission, just a clarifying question. If the commission were to postpone tonight, is the direction to address all of the recommended amendments, all of the conditions recommended by staff, or is it to deal with specific issues, one being the buffer, and I think the other, the open space change to mixed use? Is that what I'm hearing? I just want to clarify to make sure that we understand correctly.
I guess in my mind, the biggest things I heard was the buffer and 2A, B, and C. I mean, the commission heard 2A, or they heard a case in that general vicinity and passed something recently. 2B and 2C are fairly new items to the commission. We heard a lot of public testimony about it. And then it might also allow for some time. We didn't hear much on the additional planning recommendations that we just saw tonight. So it might allow for some time on some of that too. I guess that's the thought.
I would say
it's a long time coming, and I guess I don't know that there's a rush to get it done tonight. Maybe the petitioner might have comment on that also.
If I may, just real quick, understanding the direction of the commission and where they're going with this, I think the department would be more than willing to sit down with the petitioner to go over each recommended condition to see if there's compromise to be made. 100% we commit to that.
And I'll just finish by my original recommendation was I was sensing some hesitation. Commissioner Krishna.
Sure, I think I probably would not be supportive of a postponement. I think we've voted on many of the amendments already, and these folks have driven, close to an hour to be here, and I would rather, see them go before the assembly and testify there after this meeting. I do also think that I'm comfortable with the idea of the petitioner and the staff sitting down together and having that discussion that Mr. Whitfield just offered, if they so choose, if both parties see value in that. But I don't necessarily believe that that has to come back before the commission. I think that be a conversation that they have before it's submitted to the assembly. I'm comfortable with that, but I am willing to hear other commissioners' perspectives.
Commissioner George.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I concur with Commissioner Krishna as well that I think I'm at a place where I'm prepared to vote on the motion. I just, if it's appropriate to make findings or place them on the record, I'm willing to do so now. I just don't want to do that prematurely if we anticipate it coming back before us.
There is no motion to do such, merely a bunch of conversation regarding that. So, yeah, now would be appropriate time to add findings. Commissioner George, go ahead.
Just a few brief ones, because I know that a couple of folks have already said it more articulately than I have in a lot of ways, but I just want to commend Imagine Girdwood and Girdwood Board of Supervisors, Land Use Committee, all the organizations that have taken a tremendous amount of time to put this together. This is one of the most comprehensive plans I've ever seen come out in the municipality of Anchorage, and so I'm quite impressed. Between the housing analysis that it contains, the updated housing analysis that has been badly needed in all of our policy discussions here at the Assembly and elsewhere, the developable land survey, the work that HLB is doing in this regard, I think is very welcomed and much needed for a long time. Even something as simple as updates to the 1982 avalanche hazard study, which is used for lending purposes for folks that want to get home loans, as I experienced recently. All of these things all needed to be taken off the shelf and dusted off, and so I think that I'm looking forward to seeing this implemented. The one part that gives me pause as we send this forward, but I'm willing to send it forward knowing that we've taken action to instruct the petitioners to work with the department to resolve this with finer detail and put a finer point on it, is the vegetative buffer. I understand that it is somewhat conceptual, but it is a very critical, important part of the character of Girdwood that the residents want to see. I think that if it's going to be an imposition on any future HLB development, that it needs to be, we need to be as clear as possible and indicate a desire to see some clarity come out of the conversation that happens between the department and the petitioner. With specificity, what legal tools are to be implemented? Are they easements? Are they right-of-way? And I think as a finding, I would find that 100 feet is excessive. I know that it is an important part of this plan, but I think in future developments, when you're dealing with natural terrain in an area like Girdwood, you have to leave that less prescriptive. Otherwise, you end up with something maybe you didn't intend. So I'd like to leave with those findings for now and let my other commissioners make their points as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Strike.
Yeah, there's no current motion on the floor, is that correct?
No, there's the main motion as amended is on the floor.
Main motion. Can I entertain another amendment?
You may.
And I would amend to delete 2B and C. The previous motion was A, B, and C. And as you noted, A was corresponding to the previous action that took place by this commission a month ago.
Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Commissioner Winchester. Would you like to speak to your motion?
No, and it, you know, we tried to grasp the whole straw there with the 2A, B, and C. And the intent here was to identify again back to the people's, the community's plan. And we heard the community speak to this specifically. And in this case, since it's a comprehensive community plan, I'm not feeling I want to be in the position of Big Brother to oversee and guide them and dictate to them what they are going to have in this comprehensive plan in that regard. And these are very clear definitions that they have asked for. And again, this is their comprehensive plan. So I will support the motion.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion? I'll just add that I'm still slightly conflicted on it. I just don't, I don't know. I heard strong opposition from Girdwood about 2B. I read the packet and looked up the land, familiar with the area. It does look like one of the few areas that is capable of supporting housing regardless of the very important hemlock stand. So I don't know how to vote on that. 2C, even in public testimony, we heard mention of 2B becoming a park and the occupants of 2C walking across a bridge to get there. So I'm slightly conflicted on 2C as well. Yeah, that's just adding my comments. Anyone else wishing to speak before we vote? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote.
Ms. Eber, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you.
That motion fails. We are back on the main motion. Any more amendments to be made or any discussion on the main motion? Seeing none, I will add that I intend to support the main motion based on Commissioner Krishna's previous comments about our recommendation is just a recommendation to the Assembly. The planning staff and the petitioner will meet in the meantime, and there will be more time for Girdwood community to make their case to the Assembly. Call for the vote.
Ms. Eber, how do you vote?
No.
Clarifying no?
No.
Thank you.
We have 5 yeses, so the motion passes. Any commissioner comments? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Commissioner Strike, seconded by Commissioner Ron. Any objections? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy.